Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to this new episode of the Anonymous Throwdown Podcast. We are very happy to have you, whether you're listening on Spotify, watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a while, been a couple weeks since we had an episode. Not that long, but it's been a couple weeks. I moved. Dustin, where have you been? What's your excuse?
Twitter sucks. That's it.
So because you deactivated. I remember one week we were trying to set up the podcast and we were just like, Dustin's not in this chat anymore. And then I looked up your Twitter and I was like, oh, Dustin doesn't have a Twitter anymore. This is like, hello? What happened?
Work, finals, things like that. The normal bullshit excuses that didn't really happen. I was really just too busy rigging voting machines, if you want to know the truth. I did dip for a while.
Yeah.
We had 380 million ballots cast for Kanye, and we had to, sort that out. And, we had to rig it. But besides that, Twitter sucks. That's really it.
So you rigged the whole thing for the Dominion shit.
Yeah.
You released the Kraken for Kanye.
He was actually nice enough to hire me, too. I was the guy that Dustin hired to help, put money under the table. I had to get really good at, finding people's hands without seeing them to hand the money to.
Yeah, we found every dead person registered to vote who's ever lived in the United States, and we just filled out Joe Jorgensen on every one of them. I really don't know what happened there.
A record number of 1.2 billion ballots cast.
Joe Jorgensen wins in a landslide. All
I was surprised when Abe Lincoln voted for Joe Jorgensen.
Honestly, that was out of left field. Wait, you're telling me Martin Van Buren voted for Kanye?
Honestly, on brand for him. It's actually an interesting proposition of who would old presidents and old U.S. political figures vote for president? Okay, let's take for instance JFK. JFK would have voted for Biden probably. He's a Democrat, pretty establishment. But let's go back further. What about Abraham Lincoln? Who would he have voted for?
I think he would have voted Trump, honestly.
I mean, two Republicans, Now, but then we go back even further. Like you said, who would fucking Herbert Hoover vote for? Who's not Hoover, he's after, but I'm just curious. These guys, there's a certain level of decorum expected in American politics, and then Trump comes in, and he's just only Rosie O'Donnell when he's asked about, who the fuck would they vote for? I don't know.
I think John Quincy Adams would have voted for Joe Jorgensen.
Thomas Jefferson would definitely vote Libertarian.
I think a lot of the earlier candidates would have voted Libertarian.
They would. They'd vote for more limited government. Interesting. Anyways, okay. So Dustin, you've been studying and all of that. Are you done with your semester now?
So how my school works is I don't really get time off. For Christmas, I get a week, 2 weeks. But other than that, I have no summer break. I have nothing like that. So really, I'm not done with semester, but I am done with this unit, and I'm moving into a new unit in early January.
Nice.
Huh.
Not so nice.
I mean,
how much longer do you have school? When will you be done?
2023.
Okay.
Early 2023.
Okay. And when you graduate, what is your first dream job that you want to have?
I think, shit, that's a good job. I'm probably going to be a fry cook for 20 years or something.
Go the SpongeBob route. I feel that.
Yeah. Honestly, that might work for Christopher Nolan when he moves over to Sony or something. Because y'all know that's going to happen now.
Yeah, when Chris Nolan starts making Hallmark Christmas movie specials when he can't fucking work in Hollywood anymore.
He's done with WB. That's over.
No. He's coming for blood, though. He's coming for blood.
I'll give them on blast. He put them on major blast.
Because what was he like? He's like, this is the dumbest business decision ever made. Isn't that what he said?
He said HBO Max is the worst streaming service out there. And then,
did.
like,
Which is he wrong? No.
No,
What the fuck is there to watch on HBO Max?
That would be
Name 3 shows.
Crunchyroll.
I think
Crunchyroll
Nolan
would be
is big
worse.
enough to. Wait, what is?
Crunchyroll, that dumb anime
Crunchyroll is
platform.
fucking horrible. I think Nolan's gotten is honestly too big for WB to really get rid of. There's if unless like really this is like the breaking, the straw that broke the camel's back, like with a release or like the whole Tenet release and whatnot. I don't know. I don't think they'll break ways yet.
My question is, where would he go? Disney, where Kevin Feige's gonna be like, no, you can't do that scene. Like, no, we actually need you to put characters in your movie, Chris. And then he'd be like, no, fuck this. I'm going back to WB. Fuck you.
Wait, I have to write a character? What the
Yeah,
fuck is character
exactly.
development? I just want to show shit explode and have some really dumb underlying theme.
I mean, that's my
Wait.
thing. Is where does he go?
He
Yeah, well-
he could make his own thing.
You
Honestly.
probably have to, because the thing with Nolan is that he has a very personal style that he always brings to his movies. And that's something that Warner Brothers has kind of allowed him to do. But you're right. If he went to Disney, it would be like, so we were thinking that you could direct Captain America 4. And then if you went to Sony, it would be kind of a similar deal. And, they'd probably try to get him on Venom 3.
Wait,
And then,
I know what they'd get him on.
yeah.
The Aunt May spy thriller.
Oh my god.
I can see it with like the big Hans Zimmer, like, and then it cuts to fucking Marisa Tomei doing something.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he just has like such a personal style. Like he would have to just do his own thing. I think he'd go back to making indie films like The Following before he would like bow to Disney or Sony to do like one of their more mainstream popcorn flicks. I don't know. That's what I think. Yeah.
Well, think about it this way. Does Chris Nolan have to work another day in his life? Let me look up his net worth.
Oh no, he's worth
Chris
like 200
Nolan's
million.
Net worth is 250 million. So he doesn't have to work another day in his life. If that money just sits in the S&P 500 for the next 60 years, that'll be like $4 billion. Okay. So he doesn't have to do shit. So actually, Dustin, I think your instincts are right. Like he doesn't need it. So he doesn't need to deal with the BS of Hollywood if he doesn't want to,
Not at all. Honestly, he might just open his own theater chain at some point. It's like a big middle finger up to these companies. Like we know Quentin Tarantino has done a similar thing. He bought a famous theater in LA. I forget the name of it, but he's been operating that, and I think that's like strictly 75 millimeter. That's the kind of theater he runs. So I think Christopher Nolan's, pompous enough to kind of do the same thing. The man has a right to be pompous, though. Let's be honest.
He really does.
He puts a lot of effort into it.
Yeah.
Who, Chris?
Yeah, he's a very classical filmmaker in the sense of how he gets things done. He's not like the I'm not gonna put them on blast, but like the Russo brothers. He's not like them. They don't give a shit if their movies are shown on a 4-inch iPhone screen or if they're shown on a 100-foot IMAX theater. They just want the butts in the seats, pretty much. Christopher Nolan doesn't care about the box office gross, I think. I think he's past the point of caring about that entirely.
I agree, in a way. But I mean, wasn't he kind of like upset about Tenet though? Like how
He was.
I think he was more so upset about the theaters being shut down
because he wanted the movie to be seen just on
See,
the best.
yeah, I don't know that we can go so far as to say he doesn't care about the box office. Like I think he wants all of his movies to make a shit ton of money. Like, I think every director cares how much money their movie makes because it's the same thing with YouTube. I always say, everybody's like, you're clickbait, bro. And it's like, yeah, I want people to watch my videos. Like, not only that, I don't make videos for nobody to watch them. Nobody makes movies for nobody to watch them, and even George Lucas, if you remember after Star Wars, he was like, I'm just going to go off and do my own thing. I'm going to make indie films that only my friends will see. Do you remember when he said that? He's like, I'm walking away from Star Wars. I'm going to make a bunch of movies, but they're just for like my friends so that, and like nobody's going to see them. And he hasn't done any of those. And it's because nobody makes movies for nobody to watch them. You make movies so people watch them, period.
Mm-hmm.
That's simple. So I think everybody cares a little bit. But to your point, I think you're right that he doesn't care how much money it makes. He cares more about the impact of like the cultural impact of his work and how he's perceived as a filmmaker. Like more of his ego type of thing, you know? Not saying he's egotistical, but just to the base level of ego that every human has, that they want to be, you know, receive positive affirmation is a very common trait for pretty much every human.
How do you guys
definitely-
feel?
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about that Tom Cruise situation? Since we're already on of movies.
I understand it. I mean, he didn't bring anything opinion based into it. He was saying things that are kind of factual in that. If one of these members did happen to have the disease and, you know, spread it around on set, it would get that movie shut down. Meaning Tom Cruise would be on the hook with his production companies, his insurance companies, other producers in Hollywood, things like that. Because this isn't just a movie he's starring in. This is a movie he has financial stakes in. That being Mission Impossible. He's producing it.
For me, the thing is, it depends on if this was like a first offense or if this is something that he's been trying to get people to stop doing. So, for example, you know, let's say that this is some PA's like first job on a set and her mask slips below her nose or something, and then we get that rant that we all heard. I think that would be just absolutely insane.
That's maniacal.
Yeah, but like let's say that there's like some gaffer who's going over and flirting with an electrician and they're breaking social distancing and they're taking their masks down and they're watching stuff on each other's phones, and he's passed them like 3 times and he's worked a 14-hour day and he's like, "Okay guys, you need to stop doing that. You need to stop doing that." And then suddenly, you know, he just finally breaks. I still think that his tone was unprofessional, and the only reason that I say that is because if I were a crew member on that set, I would have a hard time taking it seriously, particularly the part where he says, like, "We are not shutting this movie down!" And, like, he just goes completely, like, emotional, you know? Like, there's nothing analytical at that point. And it's like when the elementary school teacher starts yelling at all the kids, everyone starts laughing because it's like there's this sense that they're out of control. And I think that he could have gotten the same point across more effectively if he hadn't started, you know, cussing them out and getting so emotionally invested. But I don't think what he did was wrong, and I don't really have a lot of sympathy for the people who ended up quitting, because if they're breaking the rules continually, then I think that they have every right to walk away, and they probably shouldn't be working on a movie that, like Dustin mentioned, does have such high stakes.
Yeah, the movie is creating jobs for hundreds of people and crew designers, set dressers, things like that. And from what I've heard about it, it really was a multiple offense kind of thing. I don't think... Yeah. I think it was purely because the fact that this guy already started recording before the rant broke out. So he probably knew it was coming. And, you know, the language aside, I think he made a pretty good point that, you know, people are losing their homes, they're losing their jobs, can't put food on the table, can't pay their college education off.
Right, and you can't risk all of that because one person's like, the virus isn't that serious, you know?
Now, I have no sympathy when I see, you know, these set members do that when there are set photos of Matt Reeves on the Batman set in a poncho, a mask, like a face shield, sunglasses, looking like the fucking Riddler himself.
Yeah, I remember.
Directing the thing. Like, there are ways to do this job and do it efficiently while being safe, just so, you know, not even that it's keeping you safe. It's more so to make your investors happy and the people who are paying your bills happy.
See, I think that the thing was that when it first happened, I was more in the camp of like, that was pretty unprofessional. That seems really like over the top. But then, you know, I started thinking about it from the perspective of a filmmaker. And I just finished a class this semester where literally the class was like learning how to set up lights on set, how the crew members all work. And we did like some mock shoots where like I'd get to basically take on the role of a director or a gaffer or an electrician and see how it all got set up. And just thinking about that many moving parts and that many people, and if I'm running a set and I see people repeatedly breaking protocols and just kind of being obnoxious, I don't know that I'd go to the same level that Tom Cruise did, but I could see myself getting pretty heated over it.
Okay, you guys ready for my hot take on this? It's actually, I'm pretty much fully in agreement with Jake, actually. So, but it's kind of a hot take in a sense. Like, our view is a bit of a hot take because everyone on Twitter is celebrating this. Everybody's like, this is so great. He's enforcing COVID rules. COVID is something that people need to take very seriously on set. And his point about, you know, so many jobs are on the line is actually true, and taking the COVID guidelines seriously because the set has already been shut down once before. So that's not what I disagree with. In other words, the content of his rant is not the problem. The problem with what happened is that it is emblematic of toxic culture on movie sets in Hollywood that are all too common. I've known a lot of people that work on Hollywood sets, and there frankly is just too much screaming and yelling and and this type of behavior, because he didn't there's a way that he should have done this, and I'll tell you exactly how. So the story, if you read the article in the Sun, what happened was there were two people standing around a TV monitor, presumably. Also, I'm like blurring out on this screen. If you're listening on the podcast, my background is failing me right now, which is really annoying. Anyway, so the way that he should have approached this is this. Basically, what happened was there were two people standing around a monitor, and they were within 6 feet of one another. Now, this is not what I would deem to be an egregious policy violation, because they both had their masks on. They just were standing around a monitor watching the screen, maybe like cutting dailies, or I don't know what they were doing, just probably watching, a screen. And the trick is that on a movie set, I don't think that it is possible for all the hundreds and hundreds of members on the set to constantly be 6 feet apart or more. Think about Tom Cruise when he was in the makeup chair that morning doing hair and makeup. Do you think that he was less than 6 feet away from his hairdresser? Of course not. She was touching his face and his hair, as with every other actor. That is just a part of the concern. My biggest concern is that he should have approached the situation in a more professional way, exactly like Jake said. He should have taken the employees with the multiple violations and pulled them aside and gave them the exact same lecture without the screaming and yelling and cussing and saying, fuck you, you motherfuckers, which is actually directly what he says. So he could have taken the employees, pulled them aside privately, and said, hey guys, we've noticed that this is now like your second or third violation of these COVID rules, and we take them very seriously. The set has already been shut down, and we are a model for all of Hollywood to be able to function. And if this set gets shut down, it's literally going to affect thousands of people's careers and lives. So we're taking this very seriously. And we want to let you know that this is what we expect of you. If you commit the same violation of what I am telling you not to do again, you're fired. It's that simple. We want to be very stern with you. As a producer, whatever, you've been great, but on these rules, you haven't been following them, and it's unacceptable. If it happens again, we're going to have to let you go. So notice that he didn't embarrass the 2 or 3 employees. In the video, you can hear him. He says, and you're fucking gone. And he's embarrassing them and demeaning them in front of all of their coworkers and friends. And that's just unacceptable. And the reason that I say that is because, I know friends that have worked in Hollywood that have gotten screamed at by these multimillionaire Hollywood elites for getting them the wrong type of milk for their Starbucks drink, right? That's a problem. There's nobody that is checking to ensure that the workplace is not toxic. And this sounds like a toxic work environment where everybody is getting screamed at because 2 people were standing around a TV. Let's say they violated it multiple times. That is a conversation that the employer has with the employees doing the policy violation. Now, if everybody is not following the rules, but that's not what happened, because the Sun article talks about how it was 2 specific people that incited the rant. And in the rant, you can hear him. He's talking to, it sounds like either 2 or 3 people specifically, and then providing a broad sort of threat to everybody. So what should have happened is he should have pulled the individual employees aside with the repeated violations, given them a stern warning privately without calling them motherfuckers and screaming at them. And additionally, he should have, given a speech to everybody, which is totally fine, in a more calm manner of like, hey, we're taking this very seriously. We've seen some violations. We've addressed those individually. We've reprimanded the employees that have done them individually. And we want to give this warning to everybody. So this is a huge ramble of my position on this. I think that the sentiment of what he's saying is obviously, fine and within his right. He is correct that if the film gets shut down, that is a huge disaster for everybody. So he's right to take it seriously. The way in which he approached it is really unprofessional and frankly unacceptable and emblematic of toxic workplace cultures and environments on Hollywood that are unfortunately all too common.
It actually has a lot in common for me personally with the Christian Bale situation that happened on Terminator Salvation. But the thing is, I'd say Tom Cruise, I can understand his freak out a little bit more just because there's a lot more stakes on the line. And I believe him when he says he's, stressed out. He's on phone calls all night with different insurance companies, producers, things like that. Now, does that make his freak out acceptable? No, not at all. But do I understand where he comes from more so than, say, like a Christian Bale type, where a light guy just so happened to like lower light in the frame for a single second and throw off Christian Bale's performance. Now,
I agree.
I do have to
I
say,
agree with
besides that, I do like how in both these freakouts, both of them take a second and pause and then go, I know both you are great guys, but hear me out, you fucking suck. Both of them do that. Christian Bale's is a little bit more obvious because he literally, I think the quote is something like, you're a great guy, but you're
we're
a
done
fucking
professionally.
amateur. We're done professionally, and he calls him a fucking amateur.
Yeah.
And Tom Cruise says something to the effect of like, I know you're working hard, but I don't want to see this set shut down because you motherfuckers aren't fucking distancing.
Well, it's interesting because I had a professor who he was talking about he has some experience on sets and stuff, but he was talking about the Christian Bale freak out, and he wasn't there or anything, but he was saying that actually happens pretty commonly as well, and it's because actors get very emotionally if they're method actors. If they're not method actors, it's generally not a problem, but when actors get emotionally attached to the scene they're performing, and let's say some crew member like walks in their eye line during the scene, that person's going to get fired because they can't be wasting time throwing off the actor's performance because they're generally rushing to get these scenes filmed and done. And so if it throws off an actor, then they do have a good reason to be upset. But that, again, like the Tom Cruise situation, that doesn't justify, cussing someone out, screaming at them. It's like Coby mentioned, a toxic work environment. And I mean, it's like the same reason that I wouldn't stick around at my job if my manager came and talked to me that way because,
Right.
Let's say I screwed up an order,
Mm-hmm. And
exactly. Would you stick around to be screamed at by somebody? No.
Oh,
And just
hell
because
no.
you're working on a Hollywood set doesn't mean that that's any better or that's cool. In fact, it makes it even worse because you have these PAs making minimum wage getting screamed at by a multimillionaire fucking, actor who
And I'm pretty sure multiple people quit too after that.
30
so.
people did, I think around
Yeah.
30. And I do not blame them. I don't perceive it as necessarily that they wanted to violate the COVID rules. Again, they all had their masks on. Sure, they might have been too close together, and that's something that, it's difficult to say. I mean, maybe if they received that stern warning already and then they did it, but then you just have to draw the line in the sand and say you're fired. Like, you can't have a meltdown reaction. You just have to say this is what's expected, and to scream and yell at people and demean them in front of their coworkers and friends is just it's really unprofessional and not a good look for the industry.
Well, think about
It's
it.
weird how he's trying to he's like saying that they're trying to set an example for Hollywood, but at the same time doing that shit. Yeah.
Well, think about when you're in school, middle school, high school, whenever, and you have a substitute teacher comes in and people keep talking over the substitute teacher, and then the teacher flips out at the students. I know that I've been in classrooms like that where that has happened. I don't know if you guys have, but what I find is that it's very difficult to take someone seriously when they melt down like that, because it doesn't feel like they're giving you any logistic reasons for you to stop your behavior, but instead they're freaking out at you for talking over them, but in doing so their behavior is just as bad, if not worse. And I think that it's a very similar situation in a work environment.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. Now, one point I wanted to add earlier about the method actor thing, I'd understand it if it was more of a character-focused drama where they're super emotionally invested in these characters, their lives, things like that.
Right, but it's Terminator Salvation.
Yeah, let's not forget that the movie that this was on was Terminator Salvation. And he basically plays a fucking door in that movie. And I also know in that one, I think a lot of it comes down to, say, if the director is there and the director actually has some grit, because I don't think the director was present during the Tom Cruise situation. But I know the director was present in the Christian Bale one, because you can hear him in the background going, Chris, stop. Yeah. It's like, you aren't going to do anything, Mick G. This is your top talent. And
Is this the one where the guy with the box, like the guy in the box suit, walks in?
I don't think that was real. I think
that's
that
a
was,
fake video.
Yeah.
That's a fake video.
Oh.
Yeah.
The real one is just audio?
Yeah, it's just audio because I think it's a lot easier to get the audio of situations like this versus the actual videotapes. Because a lot of times if these videotapes come out, I feel like they can get linked to people via like metadata or anything like that.
Right.
So I think a lot of people are a little bit smarter, especially if you work around cameras a lot.
Well, plus imagine if like Christian Bale is having his freak out and then he sees that you have your phone out and you're videotaping him, you know?
At that point,
Whereas
he's
like
probably
you
going
can
to beat
turn
the
on
shit
voice
out of you.
memos and put it in your pocket and no one's gonna know.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's probably what happened with Tom Cruise. I mean, there's no video there because I'm sure if Tom Cruise saw the guy recording him, he'd have fired all of them
Does
on the
his own
spot.
stunts, so you're
Yeah, remember
No,
when that guy almost stabbed him in the eye with a knife?
Yeah.
Have you guys ever read about that?
Tom
Yeah, you
Cruise
mentioned
fucking
Yeah,
nuts.
you mentioned it to me one time and then I looked into it. It's crazy.
Wait, what
Where
happened?
basically in Mission Impossible 2, which is I forget who directed, I think John Woo.
Yeah.
There's a scene where a guy like jumps on top of Tom Cruise and he's about to stab him in the eye, and there's a really close-up shot of the knife in his cornea, like less than like a quarter of an inch away from his eyeball. That's practical. What they did was they wired the guy up and they measured the distance between him and Tom Cruise when they're on the ground, and they dropped him. And the wire caught him about like a 1/16 of an inch away from Tom Cruise's
Oh my
eye.
fucking god.
They actually did that because Tom Cruise has a death wish.
Yeah.
He's a nut in more ways than one.
I love it though. It's honestly,
Yeah.
it makes for good movies. It makes
The
for really-
Scientology part is the funniest.
That's the scariest part.
Have you seen the he had this interview with Matt Lauer, and he goes on and he basically like shits on psychiatry in the entire industry, and he's making the argument that like no kid should be put on Ritalin, and like psychiatry is a fake industry and everything
Didn't
like that.
he say something bad about Brooke Shields because she was on antidepressants?
Is that true? Is that what really happened?
I could have swore something like that happened. I'm gonna fact check
sounds
that
like it.
before
He
I
doesn't.
get.
Yeah, he doesn't
canceled.
believe in antidepressants. He doesn't believe in. Oh yeah, Cruz told Access Hollywood that Shields' use of antidepressant to battle postpartum depression was irresponsible, and got a telling off in return. When someone says medication has helped them, it is to cope. It didn't cure anything. Brooke Shields got it in a public spat. Who is Brooke Shields?
She's an actress.
What?
What do you mean? What?
Like in what? What movies has she been in?
She was really big in the late 90s. She was in like, not even the late 90s, the early 80s. So things like The Blue Lagoon or Pretty Baby or I'm just reading the Wikipedia. She's in Law and Order Special Victims Unit, so that's something. She isn't that big of an actress, truthfully, but she used to be a household name in like the early aughts. Not so much anymore.
Why did Tom Cruise single her out in her use of
I
SSRIs?
think they worked together. I
Oh.
think they actually were on a set together, if I'm not mistaken. And like you said, it's postpartum depression. That's not even anything she can control. That just happens. Like, she had a baby and she got sad. And he wanted to shit on her for taking antidepressants.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really bizarre.
Now I'm reading an article. All the times Tom Cruise was a total dick. And then it's the discussion with Matt Lauer about psychiatry. There's no such thing as a chemical imbalance, where he dismissed postpartum depression and argued that exercise and vitamins could cure depression. Shields soon fought back against those remarks, calling them a disservice to mothers everywhere. There's no such thing as a chemical imbalance. You don't know the history of psychiatry. I do. Cruz told Lauer in a heated Today exchange. All it does is mask the problem. That's what it does. That's all it does. You're not getting to the reason why. When Lauer brought up postpartum depression, Cruz merely stated drugs are not the answer. These drugs are very dangerous. They're mind-altering antipsychotic drugs, and there are ways of doing it without that. The thing I'm saying about Brooke is there is misinformation, and she doesn't understand the history of psychiatry. I disagree with it. The weird part is that he could just say I disagree with psychiatry without saying, like, you know, that girl, she shouldn't have taken them. It's like,
Right.
why, you know, like, just say that you don't like them. Why are you singling out one person and saying that they're irresponsible for taking
It would be like me trying to say like you shouldn't make clickbait titles versus like, you know who sucks with clickbait titles? Slick Moth. He freaking is terrible with it.
It's like everybody does that. So
Yeah.
And then, in probably his most legendary interview, Tom Cruise's Scientology video still reeks of blatant misogyny and white male ego. I'm reading from this site called Pop Dust. We are the authorities for getting people off drugs, Cruise says intently to the camera. We are the authorities of the mind. The interview only gets weirder and more psychotic as it goes on. I wish the world was a different place. I want to go on vacation, but I can't because I know.
I know.
So, yeah, that's my position on it. You know, it's clear that he is very concerned about the jobs of other people and making sure that Hollywood stays open, which is good. I don't disagree with that. But you know, imagine being the PA that makes minimum wage on your first film set, and Tom Cruise is fucking screaming at you, like that sucks. It's not fun.
Talking about toxic work environments, let's talk about Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah. So
that's a great segue.
Yeah, that was. So I
That's number 2
over
for
this
this
last
podcast, by the way, just saying.
Yeah, over this last weekend, I've been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla and was pleasantly surprised that it doesn't suck. But it sounds like some of you guys have been playing Cyberpunk 2077 and that it is a little worse. And I've seen some of the news reports on it. So, Dustin, were you the one who said that you've been playing it?
Yes, I have about 25 hours clocked in so far. You know, I've been playing it maybe 3 or 4 hours a time, late nights, just, wasting time.
Marcel, have you played it, Marcel?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so am I the only person of authority here who's actually experienced the game? Okay, so I have a lot to say, and I have a lot of knowledge on the situation with CD Projekt Red. So, basically, I bought it on a base Xbox One, mostly because that's mostly where I play now. I'm trying to get a Series X, but, that's almost impossible now. And I have currently been playing the game. I think it runs at 810p on Xbox One at the highest resolution. And the average frame rate is probably somewhere between 22 and 23 and probably drops down to 15, 16 when driving or in combat. And it's the same on either platform, PS4 or Xbox One. It's a little bit better on next gen. It still has all the frequent bugs, and on PC, as long as you have, your $2,000 rig, you might be fine, maybe, if it doesn't corrupt your save. So currently where I'm at is I'm frustrated with having a game I'm very interested in. I like the tabletop game. I like the lore. I respect the creator Mike Pondsmith for what he did. This came out in 1988, and
it's like a card turn-based game, right?
It's more so like Dungeons and Dragons, where you make like a character sheet and you spec your character out. Yep. And this is a world that he's been building for 32 years. This is effectively his baby, and he even waited for a game developer to come along who he actually trusted could get the job done. And while they did get the job done, I think they may have gotten it done a little too fast, if that makes sense. This game is the kind of game that could have taken another year or two in the oven to actually get completed and released. But instead, they thought it was a great idea to announce it in 2012, release a trailer in 2013 that ended with releases when it's ready, and then 8 years later releasing a game that wasn't ready for the alpha stage. And that is in no way in part due to the developers mishandling anything about that. It's not the developers' fault.
No
one is blaming the developers. They tried their best. They were working 80 to 100-hour work weeks from home, barely able to see their kids, do anything like that, barely able to have a life at that point. And that was to release a product that would make the executives money from their stockholders. And what happened was the game came out December 10th. On December 4th, they started opening reviews. The reviews averaged 8, 9s, and 10s. Now, I saw their stock earlier. I'm not an investor. I think they're only on the Polish stock market. Their stocks were going for about $31 a trade, which isn't horrible over there. That's like fine. Reviews came out, went up to 31. It was great. They averaged around 24, 25. And then footage of the PS4 and Xbox One version started coming out. Had a drop there, but it wasn't too bad. It was a minor drop. And then the bigger controversies happened when people realized, oh wait, all the footage we were shown so far is from their $80,000 computer rigs with 256 gigabytes of RAM, and three 3090s hooked into it that no one person can own. And all these things came out about their workplace, things like that. And we heard about a Zoom meeting that happened a couple days ago where basically all the regular employees could grill the executives and the CEO. And I think one of them that stuck out to me was one of their employees basically said, "Don't you think it's kind of hypocritical that we make a game featuring such mega corporation abuse when we are doing the same exact thing in this company?" And the CEO couldn't even say anything back because he knows he's right. And now the situation they're in is they are actually about to get sued by their investors. Possibly.
Really?
This is a possibility. Yeah, their investors are, they might be putting a lawsuit forward claiming that they have misled the public by not showing them console versions of the game, releasing a console version of the game that could actually pass certification, because a lot of why that game got passed through, Sony and Microsoft's process is A, they don't really check to see how well a game runs. They check to see if the game will break your console. Yeah. And B, they actually trusted the developer that they would fix the game before launch and, put out a day one update that would fix a majority of the issues and frame rates and things like that.
Yeah, wasn't that another leak that came out that they basically admitted yeah, Sony and Microsoft were really under the impression that we were going to fix it?
No, they even admitted so in an open letter that they released on their Twitter, to where they basically said, when we were developing this game, we didn't pay near enough attention to the PS4 and Xbox One user bases. And that's such a shame, because this game was announced before those consoles were announced.
Yeah.
This game was announced a year before those consoles. And the game didn't even start proper development until Witcher 3's DLC ended development, which was late 2016, early 2017.
Well, are you shitting me?
I'm not. Now, the game may have been getting written, or the game may have been getting, laid out on paper. But no concrete, huge push in development was made until 3.5, 4 years ago, at most.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
And this is a wildly ambitious game. This is a game that could have taken 5 years of development, and I don't think anyone would have been mad. And they even came out, a lot of CD Projekt Red dick writers are going to say something along the lines of, maybe don't play on 8-year-old hardware, or, maybe don't play on console, get a PC, which are moot points when most of today's players of AAA games are on these machines.
Right.
The developers have to play by these machines, whether they want to or not. They don't have a choice. And to release a broken product for the same amount of money that, these other people are being able to experience the game at way better resolutions, frame rates, and actually have a playable experience is quite a shame. And they're actually getting called out for it. Their stock dropped to about $16, $15. Over half of its market value dropped since this game came out. And mind you, this game isn't a flop. This game made its marketing budget and its production budget back through pre-orders alone.
What? Really?
This might be the highest selling game of the year. The game has already sold, I think, 8 million copies.
I was about to ask if Avengers was which one was a bigger flop. The answer is that.
Well, Cyberpunk
Avengers
actually
is still the
made
flop.
money. Cyberpunk made money.
Right.
Who paid for Avengers? I know I didn't. I know you guys
I did not. Nope.
I got scammed.
I got scammed too.
Damn.
I got bamboozled by that game.
I decided I'll wait for a week to see what people's impressions are after a week, and then I'm glad I waited, because no one seems to be playing it anymore.
I'm writing that game purchase off on my taxes.
And
Sorry, Marcel. What?
See, that game. Sorry, go ahead.
I spent 3 months, and then I didn't play for 3 months. I finished the story after doing 2 missions, which were I thought I would be playing it longer, which I didn't. And then I just never touched it ever again.
Yeah.
It was sad. It's a scam.
Write it off on your taxes, Marcel.
Yeah, business expense. But the reason why I feel like Cyberpunk is more damaging to the overall brand than Avengers is because everyone went into Avengers knowing what it was. It didn't run terribly. It was playable, and some people even have fun with that gameplay, even though they think the business practices behind it are shady.
At least they were honest about it.
They were honest, yeah. Everyone knew what they were getting into, whether they wanted to admit it or not. But with Cyberpunk, you have a game with 8 years of anticipation. You have CD Projekt Red, which is a very well-respected developer. I don't know if you guys are familiar with their community or not, but they were one of the few honest developers who kind of talked about things in a blunt way, who didn't seem like they wanted to scam their, player base. And this past week they have, lied to consumers. They might be getting sued by investors. They bowed down to the Chinese government by taking a game off its store because it had a Winnie the Pooh Xi Jinping reference in it.
Oh
It was
God.
a game. It was a game that released on Steam about a year and a half ago, and the Chinese government took the business license away from the publisher, and basically said, we'll take this game down, and that happened. And then, now the developers tried putting the game up on GOG, which is a launcher kind of like Epic Games and Steam that is run by CD Projekt Red. It's like a wholly owned subsidiary. And
Oh, really?
Yeah, they pulled the game.
That's embarrassing.
They pulled the game, and in this past week, they have went from a well-respected, well-regarded developer to being on terms with companies like Electronic Arts and Activision and Take-Two. And that's a shame. And also, fun fact, I didn't know this until I bought the physical copy. The game is physically distributed by WB Games.
Wow.
I got an HBO
What?
Max trial with my Cyberpunk game.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
So
So-
that's why it's shit. I'm just kidding.
No, I don't think WB actually had any part in the actual overall publishing of the game. I think that they handled the physical stuff. So
Besides shipping a broken ass game, yeah, they had nothing to do with it.
they weren't the ones to ship it. They just
No.
slapped it in a box and sent it out. They're still
But-
equally as liable.
They,
I mean,
but I mean, they put
They
their
were-
name on
they
the
were-
damn thing,
Yeah.
and the
They're
game
a
doesn't
copy
work.
machine.
it's all related. I bet it's the Arkham Knight team that optimized it for consoles. Iron Galaxy Studios came back from the grave or whatever they're doing to release a busted game. And you know what? Both times they've been getting 100% refund rates. Because after Cyberpunk was... I don't know if you guys heard, it made pretty big news. Cyberpunk was actually taken off the PlayStation 4 store. You cannot buy the game digitally anymore. It's just not possible. And my theory is this is actually done on the part of Sony, because how a platform like Sony works is it's their money that is taken when they get a refund. The developer doesn't out-of-pocket pay for that. Now, in Steam and Xbox and most other platforms, it's actually the developer that pays for the refunds, and the company who runs the store actually keeps their cut. So it's just
Really?
the developer losing money. Yeah, that's how it works on Steam, at least.
Wow.
And PlayStation was actually the one doing refunds. So I'm assuming what they did to mitigate that was they told CD Projekt Red, you're paying for these refunds, and we're taking your game off the store until you fix it.
Yeah.
Now, Microsoft took I'd say a better approach to this. They actually didn't take the game off the store for those who actually, say, owned a Series X or were okay with poor performance, because they're still able to buy the game, but you are able to get a refund almost guaranteed. No matter game time, no matter anything like that.
But Dustin, doesn't Microsoft already have a guaranteed refund policy in their store?
I don't think it's guaranteed. I think it's kind of similar to Steam's, where it depends on the date you purchase it, how many hours you've played in it, things like that, and then they kind of mitigate it. So, like, say if you buy a game and it just doesn't run well and you don't like it and you only have 30 minutes of play time and you bought it yesterday, they're more than likely going to refund you that. But if you, say, bought Skyrim and you have 300 hours in it and you bought it 4 years ago, they're going to say, go fuck yourself.
And they're like,
That's
this
not
game
our problem.
sucks. I need a refund. Yeah. Right.
Need money, please. Yeah, no, they're not going to do it. But this is the first time we've seen a game launch in such a busted and buggy state. That
It's
most console
embarrassing.
manufacturers are doing it.
It really
It's
is
bad.
embarrassing. And I think that what is so appalling is that it's happened on every aspect of this game. It's not just that it's a bad game, or not that it's a bad game, but that it's like a bad performing game that can't run, that has so many glitches, but also that we heard so much about the production, that there was so much crunch, and also that the developers were told you'll only get your Christmas bonus if this game gets a 90% on Metacritic. And
Who fucking
then
stupid is that?
I know. And then they refused to let any of the critics show their own footage in their reviews. They said you have to use our stock footage because we know that the game doesn't run. And then the fact that that did not allow consumers to make an informed purchase. And so now they have to offer refunds, and they're pretending like it's an honest mistake. They're like, yeah, we're sorry that it didn't live up to your expectations, but we'll offer free refunds. And it's like, okay, except that Microsoft and Sony did not know about this refund policy that you were about to offer. So you just threw everybody under the bus, and you knew that this game was in this state before you had to pretend like it was an honest mistake. So just all around, I understand why CD Projekt Red fell from being like a beloved standard for community support to being basically lower than like EA, Ubisoft in regards to the backlash from fans when they do things like this. I really do think it's embarrassing, and I think that it's the most extreme example in recent memory that shows behavior in the industry that just needs to stop. You know, we've seen a little bit of stuff with crunch in the past, and sometimes the truth is that crunch kind of is a necessary evil in the industry. I've done a lot of research and watched a lot of videos, and unfortunately, like, sometimes crunch just does have to happen. Now, studios sometimes do that really badly and basically say you're fired unless you work 80-hour weeks, but then there are other companies that are a little better, and everyone just kind of recognizes we have to put in some extra work on this title. But I think that CD Projekt Red has done something that's so egregious, both to the developers and to the consumers, that it, I think, is just a perfect example that of why we need a little bit more in place in regards to protecting the mental health of the developers, but then also the final product that the consumers will be buying.
And I feel like a lot of this doesn't fall on even the employees of CD Projekt Red. They employ over 1,000 people. And I'm sure a majority of these 1,000 people pour their life, soul, heart into this game to see it hit on store shelves before the holiday, which is, I'm sure, a major thing that they were, selling on was this game will sell in the holidays. It'll be one of the highest selling games of the year, if not the most, if it can be Call of Duty, which it won't. Let's be honest. But this all falls on the CEOs, Adam Kaczynski and Marcina Winsky. So these guys are basically the reason this game was forced out. These guys and the executives of this company. And these guys are blatant liars. They have gone on record and lied. Earlier this year, a few months ago, the CEO, I think the one it was Adam Kaczynski, basically said, "Oh, the PS4 and Xbox One versions run surprisingly well."
Oh yeah, I saw that shit.
If locked 900p, no, not locked. If like dynamic resolution 900p where it can drop to like 720 and max at 900 if nothing's on the screen on PS4, and 810p on Xbox One where it can go as low as like 640p where it's not even HD anymore at that point.
Oh my god.
That's not running surprisingly well. That's fucking
Yeah.
RuneScape in 2004 levels of quality. That's Minecraft.
That's dog
Except
shit.
Minecraft is a playable game, unlike Cyberpunk. And like I said, that doesn't fall on the developers of this product. I don't even want the game fixed yet. I want them to be able to go home, experience Christmas with their families or their holidays with their families, get some time off from the hell that they were probably put through. And honestly, I hope a few of them quit and form their own studio to where they can actually run things in a semi-professional and well-done way, unlike what CD Projekt Red has done recently.
So, Dustin, I actually have a question for you because you brought a lot of interesting insights in a lot of what you're saying. And so I'm curious, do you need Cyberpunk 2077 or games like it in the future to be of the scope that every AAA game seems to have to be? It feels like every AAA game has to be, 60 to 80 hours long, and that it has to have so many features. Does Cyberpunk 2077 need all that to be a good game, or could they have cut out 25% of the content and given us a tighter experience that was easier for the devs to handle, that ran a lot better at launch, and have been just as fine with that?
So for CD Projekt Red, interesting as it is kind of a basic generic RPG with some really good writing and world building. And that's, again, not on the part of the developer. That's all on the directors of gameplay, the directors of technical things. It's stuff like that. And they actually promised a lot of features that didn't make it into the game. And while I think a game like not CD Projekt Red, like a game like Cyberpunk needs to be big in scope because it is based on a tabletop RPG. It's an RPG based on an RPG. Now, if it wasn't based on this type of role-playing game, this could have been a linear shooter with a really good story that I would have enjoyed just as much, if not more, than I'm enjoying the game now.
Yeah.
But because the problem of it all stems from the fact that they announced this game 8 years ago. People have died in that time who would have been fans of this game. People have died who were anticipating this game. That's how long of a time it is. And it's insane. People have joined and left the company in that time. People have had... How many Christopher Nolan movies dropped in that time since 2012? 3?
Well, 3.
Yep.
Yeah, 3.
3 $200+ million budget movies that take years to craft came out in that time, and the time it took one $200 million budgeted video game to come out, because they decided to blow the load and announce the game early to build up hype for a product that they didn't know would be disappointing on launch. They put way too much pressure on these developers, and they put way too much pressure on themselves. You can't... There's no such thing as a perfect developer, and I think everyone knows that at this point. But when you promise the general public, especially people who aren't on the end when it comes to video games, who actually know how these companies operate and have, studied the industry to see how things are, you can really mislead them by saying things like, oh yeah, we'll have every NPCs has, daily routines that they do, and fuck it, you can fly the cars, and fuck it, you can go into every building, and you can fuck every hooker in the game. If you can't live up to something, you don't announce it. You don't be like what Sean Murray did with No Man's Sky, and be like, yeah, well, you can go to every planet, and you can draw a dick and claim it as your own, and there's crafting. You can propose to your girlfriend in it, and she'll say yes 100% of the time, guaranteed. It's nothing like that. It's a product that is made by people, and people have flaws. Therefore, products have flaws. You can't make a perfect product, and you shouldn't market one as a near perfect product, especially if you can't deliver. Especially if you're going to rush the game when it needed 2 more years of development at least.
Right. Yeah, it's just, I've been thinking, I mean, I mentioned earlier how I've kind of been playing Valhalla, and it was the same thought that I had when I was playing Odyssey. Was there was a lot of the game where I was like, I'm not even having fun playing this. I'm just grinding through it. And it feels like that's the case with a lot of games these days, is that it's almost getting so focused on how big they can make the games that they don't stop to ask themselves, like, is what we're doing even fun? Like, I hear Patrick Redding, for example, with Gotham Knights say, Gotham Knights is not a game you can grind out in one weekend. It's going to take you a long time. It's going to take a lot of investigation. That's cool. And that could be a lot of really fun features, but also that runs the risk of, okay, the investigation side of this game is not fun, and it's 50% of the content. And same with like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, for example. The reason that so many people didn't like that game very much is that there was so much story in that game that it wasn't good. That like the dialogue was clunky because they had to write probably a 10,000 page script for that thing. So of course it's not very well polished. And there's some games that have pulled it off. For example, Red Dead Redemption 2 I played all the way through and enjoyed, but it's because I was having fun the entire time. And I just think that it's an interesting balance, because it seems like the games that have the most crunch, where the developers are the most stressed out, are the ones that aren't even particularly fun. I don't know.
Because I feel like their passion for the game decreases over time when they're forced to slave away 80 to 100 hour weekdays, 6 days out of the week. And so when you're doing something for work and you don't find any passion in it anymore, you're going to have a shittier product. If you go to McDonald's right now and get a double cheeseburger, you're not getting an artisan like beef cut patty. You're getting something that a 16-year-old slapped together who's making $12 an hour is doing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, making a pretty good fucking burger.
Yeah. I wouldn't say good, but he's making a burger, quote unquote burger. But
whatever it is.
Like, yeah, like I think the industry should kind of devolve more so into how it was 10 years ago, where there were a lot more AA type games getting made.
Or even like Miles Morales. Like, I'd be fine if we got a bunch of games that were, $40, $50 instead, and just half the length of
full games.
The super big ones. Yeah.
And like, I didn't even enjoy Miles Morales that much. I didn't love it. I didn't love Spider-Man 2018 either, but I feel like there was so much heart and soul put into Miles Morales that it kind of made it null and void, to where it actually increased my enjoyment of the game versus a product like Cyberpunk, which does have that heart put into it when you aren't doing these rudimentary, side missions where someone's selling crack on the street and you just punch them in the face once and boom, you get some XP. Because that's 60% of the content in that open world. And
really, wow.
Yeah, and the reason I'm so
Yikes.
upset about it is because I did spend $60 on it.
Yeah.
People spent a lot of money on this product. $60 isn't a lot of money. I mean, it isn't a lot of money, but it is. So that's like a work day for some people.
Yep.
For some people making $8.75, minimum wage in whatever state they're in, it's minimum like 3 hours, 4 hours of work for a regular working person. And to, in a pandemic, release a game where a lot of people have lost their jobs, or they're tight on money, the stimulus hasn't hit yet, or whatever's going on. To release a product that isn't even finished, that these people can enjoy and get some escapism out of, is repulsive. It's abhorrent and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
To even sell this thing as it is now. And I blame that on the CEOs. And I blame it on the executives.
Damn. Slay.
That was like a 25-minute rant about Cyberpunk, and I don't even hate the game. I like the game. I like it a lot. I would have loved it had it been 2 more years in development, and even if they had the balls to fucking cancel it on last gen, if they actually could have done that.
No, I don't think they could have done that.
Probably not, but sometimes you gotta do what's best for your game.
Yeah, I agree. It would have been better if like it would have had tons of backlash at first, but yeah, if they'd have said, "Listen, the game just does not work on PS4, Xbox One. We're not."
I mean, I still think there would be like a huge. I mean, like how many? We have to look at like those sales, because I think a lot of people still bought it on last.
And hear me out. Oh no, everyone bought it on last gen. I'd say a good 40-50% of the player base is last gen.
Yep.
And that's what makes this even more despicable. And I can guarantee, even when a game like, Gotham Knights comes out, that comes out next year, and that is a cross-generation title, you aren't going to be seeing 1080p on PS4, and you're not going to be seeing 900p on Xbox One. You're going to be seeing 900p, 720p on these games, because they're truly being made for next gen now. We are in that cross-generational period. And then, a company like Rocksteady comes along and makes the bold-faced decision to just go next-gen only, because they can probably see where the line in the sand is drawn. Be like, our game is just not going to be worth it to run on a PS4 and an Xbox One.
I mean, yeah. I think Gotham Knights might be a little bit better, because they kind of were working on that game like 2015 and 2016, and then they canceled it, and then they made, Gotham Knights. Like, they started to work on Gotham Knights, at least around that time. Right, Coby?
Right. What?
So,
I didn't hear you. What did you say?
Like Gotham Knights, do you think it will be functional on last gen, like, or at least like compared to like Cyberpunk?
Yeah, because the
not compared to Cyberpunk. Like, do you think it will be like at least like better than like 900p and whatnot?
I think it's gonna be about that. It's gonna be around that.
Yeah.
Around there.
It's gonna be interesting to see. Yeah. I think that it's pulling a lot more from Arkham than people realize, and I think that what the model they're going with, it's not as complicated as something like Cyberpunk. So I don't know.
True. My question will be, which games are planned to be on PS4 and Xbox One? And because this whole debacle, they're like, just kidding, we're not putting our games there. Because nobody wants to be in the same scandal. Granted, this is kind of like, I don't know. I mean, imagine if they put Grand Theft Auto 5 on PS2, or I don't know. It just seems like for the hardware, if you look at the specs of what's in the PS4 and the Xbox One, it's like a, they came out in 2013, and not only that,
2012 PC.
It is a correct. It is a mid-range 2012 PC, and that can't run shit. Not really, like not well. I'm playing Rainbow Six Siege today, and I'm like, wow, the graphics do not look very good in this game. They just don't. But if you play it on next gen, wow, it looks amazing. So technology constantly advances, but for a $500 mid-range 2012, 2013 PC, it holds up pretty well. For playing Cyberpunk, no, it can't do shit.
Which is sad.
It's sad when they at least sell it.
Yeah.
Well, here's the funny thing. I saw on a GameStop poster today. I was outside GameStop, and on their poster, it says, Cyberpunk 2077, PS4, Xbox One, PC. Also runs great on Xbox One, Series X, and PS5. That's exactly how they market it. They list PS4 and Xbox One first, and then they say also runs great on next gen.
Well, because the game actually isn't even available on next gen yet. They are doing a patch. They're doing a free upgrade that will actually further take hold of how it runs on next gen. Currently on next gen, it's running in a backwards compatibility state, to where it's truly just playing the PS4 Pro version or the Series X version or the One X.
So the next gen versions technically haven't even been released yet.
Yeah,
really?
either way, even if you're playing on next gen, you're still getting an ugly product, even though it may look clear and it is going to run better. You're still getting a buggy, chromatic abrasion, blurry looking mess. And I'm actually getting a Series X, like I said, pretty soon. And I will update you when I get that. Because there's a reason I'm getting Series X first over PS5. I think it's going to be the underdog. And I truly think that it's something to watch out for. Especially when it comes to things like this. Because Cyberpunk, I think on the Series X actually has exclusive features that the PS5 version doesn't have.
Interesting.
Especially in the sense of like, you know how a lot of next-gen games actually have like a performance mode or a quality mode?
Right.
That kind of affect frame rate or,
Right.
Graphics. The Series X version has those settings. The PS5 version doesn't. I think a lot of that comes from the way Xbox has that ecosystem set up to where they can give these developers the tools that they need to do this. Or same with like Cold War and things like that can function on these consoles. It's truly going to be interesting. But yeah, that's the Cyberpunk rant for the week.
We'll get an updated one next week. With
And
all
the
the
week after.
complaints.
Yeah, we can. We'll convene here back next week and see any developments in the cyberpunk drama. We can potentially talk about Wonder Woman 1984, which will be out by the time we come back.
I'll have seen it by then.
Oh, great! All right, so lots of other topics. So, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this week's episode, and we will see you guys back here next week. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, like the video, ring the notification bell. If you're watching on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, give us a good rating. And
Hang on, real
thank you
quick.
guys. Yes.
What's our New Year's resolution from Robbie?
Oh fuck! We didn't even get to the question.
Let's do that next time. Let's do that next time.
What was it? What fine.
I haven't even thought of my resolution yet. I'm a
Yeah,
procrastinator.
Really?
I don't believe in New Year's resolutions. They're
Neither
scams.
do I. Yeah, I
Dude,
respect
my
all-
resolution
all
last
that
year.
scam.
My resolution last year was to stop procrastinating, and I came up with it on January 16th.
Love that. Okay, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. See you next week. Peace out.